All right, peeps, welcome to the Culture and People cast. Today we have Tracy with us. Tracy, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hey, Anna, I'm Tracy Burns. I am currently the CEO of the Northeast HR Association here in the Boston area. I'm also the co-founder of Hitched, which is an online resource for people who are looking for interim HR support. Thanks
Oh,
for having
so
me.
fun. So fun. And Tracy and I got to jam a little bit about all the cool stuff that you're doing with the Northeast HR Association, the CHRO cohort. Is that kind of what you're calling it, development program?
Yep, it's Executive Women in HR. Yep.
Oh, such good work and so needed. After 20 years in corporate, I say 2 thumbs up to that program. So for
Absolutely.
you, given that you work so much with both of those organizations on influencing people and culture, what's the best thing about that for you?
Well, I think the most, right out of the gate, the best thing is just seeing the tangible result of the positive influence that you can have on people, right? I mean, there's nothing better. So I sit in sort of an interesting place because I have the NEHRA team who I'm responsible for, and the NEHRA organization that I'm responsible for creating culture. And that definitely has to be aligned with what, the external world, what we're preaching to the external world, if you will. And then I'm aligned with all of these HR leaders and these people, business leaders in the Boston area. So I get to hopefully sort of influence what they're doing inside of their organization. So it's really great to both individually and collectively be able to have that influence on people.
Yeah, I love that. And when you said, seeing that immediate growth, right? I think so often you could call us people in HR operations people a lot of words, but one of the words that I love is seed planter. I think we are those seed planters, right? And with your programs, you get to see more immediate results, right? The flower is actually starting to bloom during the development program for you.
Yep, absolutely. And especially with the Executive Women's Program, I mean, these are a group of about 15 women that we take through a process that lasts about 8 or 9 months. And you see such a big difference as they evolve. I mean, one of the first things that we do is we get them to bond so that they can trust each other and they're willing to share things. And that's like day one, hour one. We put them through a really interesting exercise to get that to happen. And then it's just nice to see it sort of all come full circle when we close out in May, and people are just feeling so much better about themselves and more confident going into these really big and visible and risky sort of roles as the head of HR.
Yeah, one thing I like to talk about in my workshops is a swagger, right? We kind of have to remind ourselves what we've been through, what we've accomplished, so that we hold more of that swagger. That's not a bad thing to have that.
It's
Right?
not, absolutely. And I see like that, I see that physically transforming people over the course of the program. And we also do a whole thing on executive presence. Maybe we should just rename the module swagger. I love it. But we do a whole thing on that about how to, hold yourself when you walk in a room, and how do you sit at a board table, and, everything that you do around just that executive presence, which can sometimes feel like it escapes people, right? It's, people say you either have it or you don't, but you really can build it. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. The keynote that I gave last week, some of the feedback that was given, which was lovely to hear, they really enjoyed the talk, but they were all talking about their swagger, because we do need to sort of give ourselves permission. It's not bragging to have that swagger and know what we're really good at and know how we can add value and make an impact. So awesome work on that. Awesome, Tracy. So I'm hearing from other top leaders that engaging employees is a challenge. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. And again, I have both the NEHRA team that I am responsible for and keeping them engaged. And I have the entire membership that I feel, responsible for and keeping them engaged with our organization. And then, of course, the board of directors, who are all volunteers. So, having those three like major stakeholders, if you will, and trying to balance those on any given day in terms of time and attention. And it requires me to be, especially in this space now, a lot more deliberate. And I'm finding that I have to slow down, which is not necessarily my strong suit, and really not make any assumptions about, that people really know my intent. And that's been sort of a theme throughout my life, is just kind of put on the brakes a little bit. And when I get excited about something, I can be like 60 miles down the road and everybody's like, where'd she go? So I think that, because engagement's also intangible, right? It's like that discretionary effort that people give. It's sometimes harder to read. It's definitely harder to read when you're virtual. You know, you're trying to pick up on body language and things like that. And so I think it's difficult. I would say that if you went into the current crisis without a lot of engagement in your whatever your group or organization or employees are, then you're probably working at quite a deficit to try to keep them engaged, you know, in these challenging times, because there are also a lot of distractions. I mean, any point, you know, the cat walks across the keyboard, or, you know, a phone rings and all of a sudden you're, you know, distracted.
Or your 9-year-old comes in and asks for your phone while you're on a call with somebody, which just happens.
Or the 17-year-old comes and says they want to Grubhub, you know, it just happens.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I think I love what you said about being deliberate. So I know that leadership is extremely hard, right? I've been a people leader for a long time too, and it is very challenging, but it's even more challenging right now for so many reasons. So the distractions, all of those things mean we have to be much more intentional and deliberate as a leader. Do you have any tactical advice that you would share with those organizations or a specific leader who wants to move their culture forward, who wants to advance their people?
Sure. Well, the first thing, you know, what I'm going to say is make sure that you have a really great HR leader, right? Like that's like 101 for me. You know, you have a chief people officer that it's at the right hand of that CEO. I think that there's just no other better positioning. And then that CHRO's chief people officer has, you know, the ability to influence and empower that organization and to influence it. So that's sort of number one for me, is making sure that HR is well positioned, that they have a voice, that they have the ability to influence, you know, that they're a business leader, that, you know, not necessarily just an HR leader, but they're a business leader there. And so, and then from there, it's really holding that C-suite accountable and making sure that, you know, what they're doing and what they're saying is also what they're doing. Because as you know, if the mission, vision, values, you know, just becomes lip service, then engagement's going to be really hard. And building a strong, cohesive culture is going to be really hard if they can point to the top and say, well, you know, that person says it, but they don't do it. So I think those are, you know, from an organizational perspective, you got to get it right at the top. You have to, so they have to emulate all those behaviors: vulnerability, transparency, all that stuff has to be emulated at the top in order to really drive a strong culture.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always say, look, the culture is not what you write on the wall. The culture is the outcome of your daily habits and behaviors of your leaders and your employees. So everyone has to be sort of walking that walk in order to get the result that you want. You want a more collaborative culture, then you better walk that walk. You want a more innovative culture, you better walk that walk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you for giving a plug for HR, because as somebody who passed up the chief human capital officer before going out on her own, like I passed up that role. It was 2 years of excruciating decisions and self-torture of should I take that role or not? I know how important that right-hand person can be, right? That consigliere, that person behind the person that is there to help you think about and approach things in a much more people operations, much more people-centric way. Yep. And that's not to say the CEO can't, but one thing I've learned as a business owner is that the more you take on, the less you're able to see clearly all of the doors that need to be opened. You need more people that can help you with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think even being the CEO, so I've been in this role similar to you. I was in corporate HR for 20 years. I've been at NEHRA for 10. And I think that one of the things I love the most is that it's given me the ability to really be myself. Thus the messy bun, you know, at 4:00 in the afternoon on Zoom. So I think that it has allowed me sort of to shed the concern of what I thought people thought I needed to be. I mean, that was more of a corporate, you know, barrier. I think when I came to NEHRA, I almost immediately felt like, okay, this is the right fit for me. And B, it is a place where I can really be myself. And that's good, you know, that I can be goofy, or I can be serious, or I cry. I mean, I'm known for crying on stage when I get emotional about things, whether it's showing gratitude or, you know, whatever reason I might need to cry, I do. And that's just very liberating. I think that at the end of the day, I mean, I think that our ability to, as we talked before, sort of pivot in this environment, some of that has to do with, I think, the fact that we are really transparent.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Tracy, we have given, I think, HR people and leaders something very informative to listen today. Thank you for the tactical advice. And I just appreciate you being with us and all you're doing for people and culture.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
All right, guys, peace and progress.